Welcome to the final lesson of the course. So last time you reorganized your application to use the full MVC structure. And you also created a view for your movies page and learned how to pass data through to that view. In this lesson, we're going to finish off that page and display that data in a usable way. Let's get started. All right, so as always, let's start off the same way. Bring up MAMP, make sure it's started. If it's not, start it, because you need MAMP started to do anything here. All right, now let's do the second thing that we always do and open up our application in Sublime Text. Here we go. Let's open up our controller that we created last time, our movie controller. Remember, it's an app, HTTP controllers. There it is, movie controller. Let's open up the new view file that we created last time. So resources, views, movies, and index.play.php. All right, so as you saw last time, view files are PHP files, which means, like I mentioned, they can contain both PHP and HTML code. We're currently passing our movie object's data to our view, remember, by supplying it in this array that we passed to the view function. But instead of just printing out the raw data like we're doing right now over here, which in essence is pretty useless in terms of creating a real page, we need to print out the data in a meaningful way. To do that, we need to access the movies one by one. So this all movies variable right here that contains all of our movie objects actually contains a collection of the objects that we retrieve from the database. And in programming, you can cycle through a collection of objects using what's called a loop. So let's go ahead and test that out. Let's remove this test code. We don't really need that anymore. And add the following. Okay. So what this says, these are two PHP statements. Note again how they're both wrapped in opening and closing PHP tags. And what this is doing is establishing a loop. So this is the start of the loop for each, and this is the end of it, end for each. What it's saying is, given this collection of items, loop through them one by one, and make each individual one accessible as this movie variable. And it's accessible, each one of them, inside of here. All right, so what does that mean? It means that this loop is going to let us move through our entire collection and access each movie individually. So let's give it a try. So the first time the loop runs, and the loop will automatically run for as many movies as are in our collection, okay? So in our case, all of the movies in our database, because that's what we retrieved. That's what's stored in all movies. So inside here, we should be able to, for example, print out a movie's title. How do we do that? Well, using an echo statement, because that's how you print out anything, and then the name of the variable that contains the single movie, an arrow, and the name of, for example, a piece of its information. So this should print out the title. All right, save that. And let's go back and open up our application and go to our movies page, and there you can see. So the titles are smashed together right now, which isn't very helpful, but our loop's working, right? It's exactly what we need to do, or it's the start of what we need to do. It's cycling through each individual movie, and the first time it goes through, it encounters my Happy Gilmore movie, so it's printing out that title. There it is. The second time it goes through, this movie variable contains my second movie object, which is Almost Famous. And it's printing out that title. So now we just need to print out all of the information and mix in some HTML elements for formatting's sake. So let's do that now. And here's something to note. You access the properties of an object using the exact same names of the columns in your database. So let's go ahead actually and open up MAMP's start page and go to phpMyAdmin. And if we go into our first Laravel app database and our movies table, you can see right here that I'll be able to access the release date using this released on column name. And that's exactly what I used here. In this case, I'm adding one additional call to the end of that, and I'm calling a built-in Laravel function that will format the date in a nice readable way. So as opposed to displaying it in that database format, that remember that year dash the month dash the day, it's going to display it in, this is code for a very nice format. It's the month, the name of the month, space, capital F represents the name of the month, lowercase d represents the day, then we have a comma, followed by the year. So that's a much nicer format. Again, look how this always needs to be followed, or PHP code always needs to be wrapped in opening and closing PHP tags. Oh, and I forgot an echo statement up here. You always need echo to print anything out. All right, so this is now just some basic HTML intermixed with PHP calls to load up, or to print out rather, our different pieces of information associated with the movie. So we have our title here. I wrapped that in an H2 heading, and then I just created a new paragraph to store the rest of the information. These strong tags just make text bold, and each one is followed by a PHP code that prints out its respective associated piece of information. So if you save that, and we go back over to our browser and refresh our movies page one more time, oh, we can't use format on a string. Okay. So this won't work as expected. Instead, let's use the following. Okay. Sorry for the confusion. Just update your code to match mine. So we're going to use a different built-in PHP function to handle the formatting of the date. Save that, refresh one more time, and there we go. All right, so this is a little better. Looks like I could do a few more things. So let's add some line breaks before rating and before review. Would make things look a little better. So we can add a BR here, which just stands for line break in HTML words. Save that one more time, refresh one more time, and there we go. We have something that's starting to look like a page. So again, you see released on, and our dates are formatted like I mentioned. We had to use a different method, but that's totally fine. We have our ratings displayed and our reviews displayed. And this is much better than that big hunk of code that we were printing out before. This is something that someone else can actually look at and comprehend. But if we look back at our view file, this code is a little cumbersome. There's a ton of these opening and closing PHP tags, and it's just a little cluttered. So remember when I told you in the previous lesson that I was going to explain why view files are named .blade.php? Let's talk about that now. So Blade is Laravel's templating engine. And what the heck does that mean? Basically, what Blade does is provides you with nice, succinct shortcuts, code shortcuts, related to common PHP functions that are used to display pieces of information or work with objects. For example, as you'll see in just a second, it has shortcuts for echo statements, which you use all the time in a view file, and things like loops, like for each statements. So let's translate our code to use some of those Blade shortcuts, and you'll see how much nicer it looks after the fact. Let's start with the for each. We can ditch the starting tag, and we'll just use an @ symbol, And we can ditch the closing tag, and we can even ditch the ending colon. All right, let's do the same for for each. That's it. Remove the starting and ending tags and lead it with an @ symbol. Already looking much better. To print something out, let's ditch this, and we'll use the blade syntax. That's it. You just take the piece of information you want to print out and you wrap it in these double curly braces. Much nicer, right? And let's go ahead and do the same for these. I'll use some fancy Sublime Text tricks to do that so we can do it at the same time. So there you go. This is our modified view file using all of the blade syntax. It's a heck of a lot nicer looking, isn't it? It makes your view files much, much nicer to read, easier to read, cleaner to read. So all in all, using Blade is super beneficial. All right, let's save that and confirm that we didn't blow anything up in the process. Refresh. Our page still looks exactly the same, which is perfect. 2 thumbs up, because again, we didn't change any content. We just changed the code structure that we were using and added Blade. All right, so now you have a full page, and that's great. But it does still look a bit bland. So for this last step, let's spruce up this page's appearance a little bit. All right, in order to make our application's page look nicer, we're gonna add the Bootstrap framework. Bootstrap is a collection of CSS styles that help you create nice, clean-looking web application elements and web application pages, just by adding a few simple CSS classes to your HTML elements. So let's go to the Bootstrap website, getbootstrap.com. Let's go to Getting Started. We're going to go down here to this Bootstrap CDN. A CDN is just a service that hosts files on the internet so you don't have to download them on your own. So grab this right here and copy that, and that's all we need. Let's go back over to our view file, and we're going to add this just right here in our head. You can click View and go to Word Wrap so that you don't have this big, huge extended line. All right, and so what this link element is doing is it's adding the Bootstrap CSS file, and that will give us access to using all of Bootstrap's awesomely formatted elements. All right, so we're just going to use 2 simple ones. We're going to start out by, since we added that script, we'll refresh, and you can see how much nicer our page is going to look already. That's a little better. Text is better. Let's center things. We're going to wrap all of our content in a div with this class container. Save that, refresh again. All right, we're looking even better. Nice and centered. Okay, let's wrap our title in a page header element, div element. Save that, refresh again. Add some much nicer spacing with this subtle border below the heading. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to turn our movies into Bootstrap's list group element. Let's go look at it in the documentation just quickly. So we go to Bootstrap and we go to Components. We scroll down here to List Group over here on the right. Click that. And scroll down to the custom content here. We're going to change our list so it looks a bit like this, much cleaner. So let's go back and do that. So we're going to surround our for each loop with a UL, which is a unordered list element, with the class list-group. We need our closing tag there. Add a space to make sure it's still nice and readable. And then inside, each one of our movies is going to be wrapped in a LI, which is a list item element with the list group item class. All right, then we just need to add a few classes to our existing elements. So to the H2, we'll add a class, list group item heading. Great. And to the paragraph, another class, list group item text. Save all that, go back, refresh, and there you go. You now have a complete page that's using some Bootstrap styles to make our elements look at least a bit nicer. The possibilities are endless, as you can see if you go through Bootstrap's site, of the elements that it lets you so easily and graciously create. But for now, you've built your first Laravel application, complete with what I'd say is a pretty decent looking page. So bravo, well done. Congratulations on making it through the course. I hope you enjoyed getting a taste of what it's like to build a full web app as you built your very own first Laravel web application. And if you liked what we covered in this course, don't stop here. In my premium online course, From Idea to Launch, I teach you how to build an entire full Laravel web application based on your own idea. And I walk you through everything step by step. So if you like the learning style of this course, you're gonna love that as well. And there's a link at the end of this video to learn more about that course. Again, thanks for following along, and don't forget to click the link coming up in a few seconds to learn more about From Idea to Launch.